the Andrew Tate who's back in the news. And it's wild. I said it. We did a Friday night spontaneous show on Viva Barnes Law, just me in the audience. But
brief little addendum, as someone pointed out to me in chat. Also, release the list of the Epstein list and the list of the P. Diddy list. I want to see that list. It's a lot more interesting than the Andrew Tate list.
Well, that depends on who you ask, and that could have been the perfect segue because people are like, Viva, you were harder and extrajudicially condemning P. Diddy, but not Tate. That must mean because you love first. And I think the first thing is, I've never even called P. Diddy a trafficker. I had on a number of people. We talked about it, what might be there, and even then, when we talked about it, I was like, I'm surprised that there were no allegations of underage trafficking in those charging documents, and surprised. Never accused him of being a pedophile, never accused him of being a sex trafficker, because I don't know that yet. Even with Hunter Biden. Andrew Tate, and the biggest mistake that I've made in this entire thing, Robert, is that when you're having a back and forth with people on Twitter, and I hadn't been following the Tate as of recently. I knew he got out of 3-month detention while they were investigating him, and I didn't know the state of the file, so I go look it up. And the first article and I'm back and forth with someone on Twitter, and I'm asking about the charges, talking about the charges, and then I look up to see what the state is, and I see, the headline says, "Not proceeding to trial." I was like, oh, so are we talking about the charges he dropped? They're like, nobody dropped the charges, and I have to go look, and now it's the biggest mistake ever. Viva didn't even know that the charges weren't dropped, therefore discredit everything he's ever said in perpetuity. And it made no difference in terms of what I was getting at, because the distinction I was saying is he hasn't been convicted yet, and so it's not legally proper to compare him to the UK rape gangs who had been convicted. I just thought the charge has been dropped because they put off the trial yet again, but it seems that there's a disagreement over what they put the trial off for. Some are saying it's to bring even more charges against Tate, so it makes him even more guilty. Others are saying it's because the prosecution is having a tough time building its case and continually needs to remedy its own mistakes from the past. And I honestly not sure where to go from this. All that to say, long-winded answer. There's I feel like an inorganic movement on social media to divide the so-called conservative by using this as a wedge, and an artificial one, to brand people who are not Tate supporters as Tate supporters, and to tear apart the so-called conservative MAGA right on Twitter with fabrications of people. And also there are some people who are, chummy with Tate. I'm certainly not one of them, to try to demonize those people and discredit everything they've ever done. What's your take? And I will, we're going to steel man this. I'm going to be following the chat to see what people say. What's your take on all of this?
So the first, to correct the various lies and libels that people have been out there spreading that just can't. I always get a kick at people that can't understand why I take a certain position. I have advocated for the right to bail of Jeffrey Epstein, of Sam Bankman-Fried,
Ghislaine
Maxwell, of all January 6th defendants, because I believe in bail. The first thing I care, it was like when the Supreme Court made the TikTok decision about national security. You know what national security means to me? The security of the Constitution of the United States and the liberties of the American people. That's what national security means, not what some politician thinks in Washington, D.C., least of all those lazy jurists in black robes. So the backstory is, some people have been saying that I am Andrew Tate's lawyer. I have never been Andrew Tate's lawyer. I have, in any circumstance, in any situation, anywhere in life, I have never been Andrew Tate's lawyer. So the second was, Barnes is in business with the Tate brothers, and they try to imply, some of these folks, that it's the webcam business. Okay, I've never been in a webcam business.
Barnes, you have trouble operating your own camera from time to time. It would not be your business.
Exactly. I'm not a boomer, but I play one when it comes to technology. I was waiting for them to connect this to Joe Francis. Say, Barnes represented Girls Gone Wild, guy Joe Francis, look at Tate, try to combine them all together. Of course, I only represented Francis briefly when there was judicial corruption in Florida, which there was, and in which there was a bogus tax case based on an inside informant who was secretly working for the government the whole time and fabricated the returns deliberately so that a prosecutor could make hay going after Joe Francis and wanted to build their political career on it. I've been very public at Joe Francis as the client I hated the most, but he still had the same constitutional rights as everybody else, because I care more about those constitutional rights than I do. One bad person is less likely to cause me harm than a government that doesn't respect our liberties and rights.
I was just going to ask you why, because I don't actually hear you say you don't like people very often. What was Joe Francis's issue?
Oh, he was the worst human on the planet. Luckily, because he constantly he tried to keep me in the case while also getting me out of the case. He was doing both at the same time because the guy was. But he made public statements that allowed me to publicly defend my reputation and allowed me to say I hate the guy. Otherwise I would never say I hate any client, even if I did. But if you go and attack me publicly, well, now I can tell you I hate that guy. There's a lot of reasons. A lot of reasons. That's another story for another day, for certain. But I thought they would somehow connect the two. So my interaction with Andrew Tate was relatively limited. I met him at CPAC.
2019.
In 2019. And this photo became sort of big. Because what happened was, so we were at the Trump Hotel. I love the Trump Hotel. It's no longer the Trump Hotel. I was sort of holding court there, and they had some big, cool leather chairs, and they were bringing me nice drinks and everything. Mike Cernovich came over, and so Cernovich was there.
This is Cernovich.
So what happened was this little center became like the center of the whole place. There's Raheem Kassam. There's Will Chamberlain right there. The guy you can see bending over
who's this guy? Because people thought that was me, Rob.
Yeah, I know. Everybody's like, "Oh, look, it's Viva Frei. Look at Viva. See, they're conspiring right there at the Trump Hotel." Paul Watson. That's Paul Watson right to my right.
Wait, to your right.
Yes,
this guy right here.
Paul Joseph. Okay. That's Paul Joseph Watson, who, by the way, is really tall. And so basically, and then that's what's his name, Ollie Alexander, over in the top right. But basically, we became like the center location because it was me and Cernovich. And we were treated well. So all of a sudden everybody else started coming over, and it became this like central thing throughout CPAC was people hanging out with Cernovich and me at the Trump, just talking because Watson was there, and then Will Chamberlain and Raheem Kassam, and anybody who had anything interesting or fun conversation ended up concentrating where we were. Because we've been to CPAC, most of them are boring. God bless them. They're some of the most mind-numbingly boring, and they're all a bunch of cheap lobbyists looking for new ways to line their pockets. So I mostly hate the people at CPAC. God bless them. I love the old school activists, but not all the lobbyists who co-opt everything. But so that ended up being tons of fun. Two of the people there was when I first met him was Andrew Tate and Tristan Tate. I had no idea who they were. Andrew, I had loosely some that he had been on reality TV or something, but was clearly a very sharp guy, very, very smart, very, very well spoken. Both he and his brother, and they were thinking about getting more involved in politics. I didn't know about their webcam business at the time. Or I think they were out of it by that point, not sure. But I was like, okay, yeah. And so they were pitching me, and I was saying, as articulate as Andrew Tate is, I was like, you should share your political viewpoints. You got a big platform. Apparently, got a lot of people that follow you. Be more engaged at exposing the insanity of the Ukraine war that was to come. At that point, it was just sort of building up as a potential conflict, but other issues that he had particular familiarity with, having lived in the U.S., the U.K., and Romania in Europe. What was interesting to me, he was pitching possibly investments for clients with Romania. And I was like, well, I'm familiar with Romania. And I was like, you got to worry about these people and then these people in the government. He didn't know any of them, which, by the way, was a clear sign that these later allegations are likely false. Because if you're in the human trafficking business at any level, if you're in the prostitution business in Eastern Central Europe, there are certain people you deal with. They didn't know who those people even were. I knew more about the organized crime networks in Central Europe than they did. And so in fact, I was telling them that Romania was not a safe place to be. They're like, oh no, it's great. Da, da, da. And I was like, well, I have other reasons to believe otherwise. They found out the hard way. So the only other business that was I even never discussed with him was in 2020 that I couldn't get bets in the U.S. and I couldn't fly to Europe for the election because of COVID lockdown policies. So I was like, do I know anybody in Europe who has access to some of the betting markets? And I was like, oh yeah, Tate lives in Romania. He's probably got access to that. And so reached out to him. It didn't work out. So that was it. The people have tried to take that and suggest that I was involved with the webcam. Oh, false. Or I was his lawyer. I never have been his lawyer. And been his advocate. Never been his advocate. None of that. In fact, I've been very critical. I don't share people can do whatever they want, but the webcam business is not a business I would personally choose to invest in. And I've been critical of his belief. I don't agree if anybody wants to know why Ben Shapiro suddenly concerned, it's kind of like why Congress suddenly got concerned about TikTok. It's because Tate's become anti-Israel. He says he's converted to Islam. All right, good luck with that. I mean, if you believe it, let's just say I'll wait to see it. The Andrew Tate I knew was maybe not Islamic, but but it's like and he's got the whole, he got big into sort of mindset pitching and marketing pitching and how you can get rich quick kind of programs and policies and ideas that he had. That's fine. That's not my. I'm not a fan of that world. Never have been. And all the uber masculine guys, they're always guys whose dad wasn't around. I mean, that's just God's honest truth. That they're mama's boys at heart, and they're overly obsessed with proving their masculinity because they lack down deep a real masculine identity. Is my own view of them. People can think whatever they want with them, but otherwise, it was like all of a sudden, out of the blue, he starts getting political for about a year and a half. Starts really getting mojo because he got this creative way to get people to boost him and his message. And then all of a sudden, he's getting criminally targeted by the Romanian government. If you have any idea what goes on in Romania, you know that the allegations against him were small change. It's like you got real human trafficking all across Romania. You got real underage prostitution in Romania. You got serious money laundering, not the Tates. Well, and so as soon as they were targeted, I was like, this screams politics. I was like, you're going to tell me I'm supposed to trust the Romanian government that has belatedly, with the help of the U.S. government, targeted someone after he became political based on something that happened 7 years ago? So I was skeptical of that case. That case has been going on and off. It went up. At one point, the Romania Court of Appeals a couple of weeks ago said that the case was so weak that they were going to release him from house arrest. Then they went to another Romanian court, and the prosecutors got them to revoke releasing him from house arrest. And then there's supposedly the UK government is looking at old allegations to try to extradite him. It's like, why do they suddenly find these allegations? I mean, here's the thing. The allegations are concerning the web trafficking business. The core problem is that almost all of the women who are in that business have testified for him. In all of my experience dealing with human trafficking cases, I'm only representing victims in that context. I have never heard of a human trafficker who all the people that they supposedly traffic testified on their behalf. It doesn't happen. So as soon as that came out, I was like, that's strong evidence in support of him. Aside from the dubious timing, does anybody really think Tate's being targeted now because they cared about his webcam business from 6 years ago? Or do you think it's because they didn't like him politically opening his mouth in ways that were causing them difficulties? It's clearly the latter. It's the most reasonable interpretation to come to. And I am a big believer in constitutional rights. I'm also not a believer in this effort to dilute the meaning of human trafficking. Having represented real victims of human trafficking, saying, oh, I thought you were going to marry me and we didn't get married, is not my definition of human trafficking. I mean, human trafficking is like the movie Take It. No, but it is horrendous and it is horrible. All the allegations against him do not meet the legal standard of human trafficking. Well, that's what even Romanian courts have said, by the way.
This is why anybody saying I'm defending him, they're new to the channel and also just liars. Because even back in the day, I said, like, people are like, have you seen all of his confessions on the internet? I was like, first of all, I know the videos you're talking about where he's talking about this. And at the time I'm saying, it really sounds like what he's describing very much sounds like it could be bordering on what they call the lover boy technique in Romanian law. I was like, I'd never heard of it.
The problem with that is that to me should not be the definition of human trafficking.
But the bottom line is that might be, I said, like, he might be talking himself into a conviction under the interpretation of the law in Romania. But when you think of human trafficking, the cam business is a disgusting, dirty business that I'd have nothing to do with, much like the porn industry. I'm not going to have anything to do with that either. But then it seems like you apply this mutatis mutandis to the porn industry at large, and you've got consequences beyond intended consequences.
And to me, that we need to always, it's like separating the difference between a pederast, a pedophile, and someone that is legally of age in the place they're in. There's huge differences here, folks. I mean, the pedophile is a very distinct kind of criminal. Your pederast, someone that it's someone that's in their early teens, is another kind of criminal, but not as bad as the pedophile. And then you got people who do things that people don't like morally, and it's like or think is fair. right? I mean, somebody decided that who was an adult goes in the webcam business because they say later, "Oh, I thought I was going to get married to the owner of the webcam business." Okay, I'm sorry, that's not my definition of human trafficking. Human trafficking that happens in the real world are people being literally kidnapped and coerced, their passports stolen from them, security keeping. And by the way, if you're in that business in Central Europe, you're in business with other criminal organizations. You're not doing this, on your own. I mean, basically, what happened was there were a couple of British guys, American guys, who there's a huge webcam market business, supply business in Central Europe. That's just the reality of Central Europe. And where it's gone, especially Romania, Ukraine, some of these places. Now, there's a big difference between your Ukrainian bride, male bride, and the Ukrainian person who gets kidnapped against their will and is put on a webcam. Those are two different. To start to say those are the same is to utterly diminish. It's like the Julian Assange allegations, where they said, "Oh, but because he didn't use birth control, there's a certain he used the condom a certain way. That means he engaged in rape. That's the same as rape. That's not the same as rape. It's
called stealthing. I discovered that in the context of that case.
Which, by the way, there's a lot of NBA baby mamas out there that, by that definition, are all rapists.
Well, no, but people are going to say, like, there are women who are accusing him of
but
violent
problem. Rape. To my knowledge, there's only two. That almost all the women that have any interaction with him are testifying for him. Who's ever heard of this? So the timing is highly dubious. Who is involved in the prosecution, their political motives, and their history of corruption makes it even more dubious. And then the fact that almost all of the women that have ever worked with him are testifying for him. I'm sorry, this is just a weak case. Everything about it screams a weak case.
I just when people say Viva, you're not defending him, but you're seeming. First of all, I start from the beginning. Okay, a man is accused of rape. They go into, very, very salacious details. Oh, geez, where have I heard that before? Clarence Thomas, the Tate, the lacrosse team, Brett Kavanaugh. Oh, but, Viva, there's medical reports allegedly here. Oh, where have I heard that again? Pete Hegseth. And they go, oh, but Viva, they charged him in this case. Where have I heard that before? Julian Assange. And they say, oh, but Viva, he's on video admitting to his crimes. I'm like, oh, who says that? They say that about Donald Trump because they say when he said grab him by the pussy, he was admitting to assault. And then Trump got actually found liable for sexual abuse. And so you follow the logic through, and you'll forgive me for being a little bit reluctant to jump on the bandwagon. And you're talking Romanian courts, which just annulled an election. You're talking UK courts that are locking people up for words. So you'll forgive me for not jumping on he's a human trafficking rapist, and I'll stick with I don't like anything about him, and I'll see how this plays out in court before I jump to any conclusions. Oh, but Viva, you didn't look at the montages. I've seen the montages.
He's being targeted for political reasons. I mean, there's just not much doubt about it. They didn't care when he was actually operating this business 7-8 years ago.
It's over 10 years, Robert. It's 2015 at the latest. It's 2013, 2012 at the earliest. So a decade.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and so
and
if you know that industry at all, I had to get to know that industry in having to defend Joe Francis on tax charges, unfortunately. But everything about his business, those were women who wanted to be in that business. They were making a lot of money, and what gave him an edge was that he was not Romanian, that he knew the U.S., that he knew the UK, that he was articulate, that he was smooth, that he had a successful. He pitched the women as much as he pitched the customers. Like, in other words, look at my lifestyle. I'm really successful. You can have the same successful lifestyle. There's a bunch of people in the West that will pay you a bunch of money to talk to you over the internet. And so that was at the earlier stages of those webcam businesses. And now I think he BS's all the time. So would I take anything he says with straight value in terms of his various bragging over the decade? No. You can meet Andrew Tate and in 5 minutes know he's probably going to exaggerate more than Donald Trump. I mean, it's just the nature of who he is. But the allegations against him, just the timing of the allegations, the source of the allegations, and the evidence concerning the allegations all undermine the credibility of those allegations. And there's a lot of people that want to hate him, and they want to hate him for their own. And it's these groups of haters. Like they travel from one group to the next and one group to the next, and they raid your chat. No matter what, you figured it out. They'll raid your Twitter conversations about things that have nothing to do with this. And they'll contaminate them, ruin them. They're the trolls that make the internet a place 80% of Americans avoid when they can. And it's part of what Rumble's tried to fix. How do you get the most free speech without the annoying the trolls who are acting in bad faith? and it's like the people that who get joy out of Rekida's case. It's like they're hoping that the government gets away with illegal activities because it will justify their own sense of self-righteousness. And that's what a lot of it is. Not a fan of never been a business partner of Andrew Tate, not a personal fan of Andrew Tate, not an enemy of him either. But the case against him smacks of politics. And I suspect that when it's all said and done, the evidence will end up acquitting him rather than convicting him. That's just from my read on it from a distance.
Well, I mean, we are dealing with the Romanian courts, which are
that's the X factor.
Annul a democratic election, but now we trust that. And then
I think that Trump got in. Watch to see if these courts don't care as much in 6 months, because I believe the Biden administration was heavily complicit in the attacks on Tate.
So that nobody accuses me of straw manning anything. There's also women that accuse them of branding them or tattooing them as a form of ownership. And even to that, I'm like, they do that on football teams. These are things that you might regret later on in life. And if there's hard evidence of
and if there was real hard evidence, they would have got him many years ago. And if there was real hard evidence, there would be a bunch of people testifying against him. And I'll hear these people, they'll say, so-and-so is testifying against him. Okay, I'll say, send me the testament, their testimony.
They'll send you video montages where he's talking about hitting.
Exactly. Instead, is like, give me the women that are the victims giving their evidence. Because what keeps coming out, including in the Romanian court, is when the women are asked, they acquit him, not convict him.
Yeah, well, and then the court actually dismissed that exculpatory evidence from the two of the alleged victims. And all that to say, I think he said a lot of things online that are certainly going to help with the prosecution. I think he is. You say an exaggerator. I think he's a bullshitter.
Well, BS's all the time.
And I don't like.
Real, I mean, it's.
I think a lot of it is real bad stupidity, like talking about rough sex, talking about women as property, and even the way the property. I remember this kid came up and it's like, Tate says women are property. It's like, and then I go hear the clips. I'm like, he's an idiot. I mean, his advice is stupid, and I like you say, probably someone who's got some serious defensive masculine issues to begin with, and so period. But the bottom line, you walk through all of this and you understand that every lefty on earth says Trump admitted to sexual assault with the grab him by the pussy tape, and he was found liable for sexual abuse. All right. Now, admittedly, I'm not going to say I'm going to exonerate Tate if he gets convicted. Allow me to be skeptical of systems which presume.
Yeah, I don't think you can get an impartial verdict out of Romania.
Well, or the UK for that matter. But
it was part of what I had familiarity with the Romanian government. So I had various clients that have had various issues over the years and knew that the Romanian government was very corrupt and very unreliable. And I mean, again, they're quoting the Romanian courts or the ones they like, because the Romanian courts have issued rulings in favor of Tate and against Tate. And it's like, it is the same, as you pointed out, the same Romanian court that just prevented the Romanian people from electing their own president. They had made a choice for president. And the Romanian courts just decided they weren't going to.
But that was the constitutional court. That one's politically motivated. This is the criminal court, so therefore you trust it. And
they're all anybody. No, that's just
I'm not going to Romania.
There's very few court systems in the world that are. There are actually no court systems that are consistently reliable. There are some that are just worse than others. And Romania is toward the bottom of that list, not toward the top.
Well, that's it, people. Clip away and try. I also want to mention this. I didn't know if I didn't think you represented Tate, but I don't ask you those questions because people don't understand. Also, like, solicitor-client relationship is itself a privileged thing. So, like, I'm not going to, hey, do you represent this person? No, like, if it's not public, you're not entitled to know that, and I don't pry. I just didn't think you had. I wouldn't have been surprised if you did, because I do know that you respect the Constitution more than
Yeah, I don't care about I care more about the Constitution than I care about individuals who may have done bad things.